Now, how this showed up in my life was interesting because it happened so slowly and so subtly that it's barely noticeable until by the time you realize it, you are in such a state of fear, because the emotion of fear is what drives this walking on eggshells. But in my case, I remember that at a certain time of day, I would suddenly start to feel a little bit anxious. And it was usually when the narcissist was coming home. And I would start to feel like this fear of anticipating what his reaction was going to be, what was going to happen. And it was very much tied to how this person was going to react and how this person was going to be with me. Now, interestingly enough, over time, those few minutes of walking on eggshells right before this person came home extended to 24/7, feeling like I was living in a state of walking on eggshells where I did not know when this person was going to explode, because oftentimes their anger makes no sense. And so it was a 24/7 feeling like you were walking through an emotional minefield every single day. Hypervigilance, or a heightened state of sensory sensitivity and alertness for potential threats. Some examples of sensory stimulation could be your hands getting sweaty, your heart beating really fast, your eyes darting side to side. That's your nervous system trying to keep you safe, trying to ensure your survival. Now, with narcissistic abuse, your nervous system begins to confuse real threat from perceived threat. And what I mean by that is that it starts to view the narcissist being angry and having their tantrums and just being abusive. Actually, I don't want to say just being abusive, because that's horrible that they're being abusive, right? But there is a difference between somebody that's emotionally and psychologically treating you that way and someone that's physically killing you. But to your nervous system, they are the same. Now, the damage, I'm not trying to minimize psychological and emotional abuse, but I really do want to stress that there is a difference between real threat and perceived threat. But narcissistic abuse causes our nervous system to confuse those two, and that's one of the reasons why we get stuck in hypervigilance. You begin living life stuck in a fawn trauma response. The fawn trauma response is when we stifle our authenticity in exchange for safety or making the other person happy. Now, with narcissistic abuse, you being you is a threat to their view of you. Like, you're not a separate individual in their mind. You don't have a different perspective as them. You are an extension of them. So your very authenticity is a threat to how they perceive you, which means anytime you are being yourself, your real authentic self, you're going to be shamed, treated as if you're a bad person. You're going to be gaslit, attacked. And little by little, you start learning that being me is dangerous. Being me brings about pain. And your fawn trauma response starts kicking in. You have no boundaries. Now, this was so hard for me to realize when I was first healing. I didn't even realize what boundaries were. Then once I understood what boundaries were, I didn't feel like I was allowed to put them down. And so I could have all the knowledge in the world that I was allowed to have boundaries, but I couldn't seem to enforce them. It's extremely uncomfortable to be around somebody that's upset, angry, disappointed. There's almost like this discomfort in the discomfort of others, instead of being able to realize that people are allowed to be upset, people are allowed to be disappointed. It's so uncomfortable that there's an impulse to have to do something to make them feel better because it's just intolerable in the body. And the reason this is part of narcissistic victim syndrome is because narcissists do not regulate their own emotions. They make you feel responsible for them. And so we internalize that and we feel responsible for the feelings of others. Because narcissistic abuse is so infested with gaslighting, it causes you to lose trust with your inner compass. Very much like if somebody takes a magnet to a compass, you can see the compass intact, but it's no longer going to point north anymore because somebody has tampered with it. Well, narcissist gaslighting tampers with your ability to trust yourself. So you lose all kinds of self-trust, the ability to trust your gut instinct, and you get stuck needing external validation. And this becomes such a catch-22 with narcissistic abuse because you no longer trust yourself. You seek external validation by the very person that is tampering with your ability to trust yourself. And then because you spend so much time in this state of not trusting self, even after the relationship ends, you may still struggle to feel like you can trust yourself. You may still notice this intense need and craving for external validation. You may find yourself stuck in depression. And oftentimes that depression can be the freeze response. In other words, with narcissistic abuse, you're not allowed to be happy. You're not allowed to be excited, passionate. You're not allowed to shine because in their mind, your shine kind of makes their shine less bright. So all the punishment that you endured when you were just being your best self, when you were happy, your nervous system now views as dangerous. And you may want to be happy now. You may be out of the relationship and the freeze response may keep you stuck. Another trauma response that you can get stuck in is the fight trauma response. I know with myself, the more laid back, patient, calm I was, the longer and harder and more painful the abuse was. Whereas when I would get to that place where I just couldn't take it anymore and I would react and get angry, all of a sudden I would be rewarded by a let up of abuse. And what this does is it literally rewires your nervous system. It can take a calm person with a super long fuse and change that person into somebody that has a very short fuse and that is very angry all the time. And that's exactly what narcissists want because then they can say, you're the problem. You may suffer from toxic shame. There's a difference between feeling as if I did something bad and feeling as if I am bad. And when we're suffering with toxic shame, breathing hurts because it's almost like you feel like you don't even deserve any ounce of life or any ounce of goodness in your life. If you happen to do some healing from childhood trauma and you have some years of kind of working on yourself, right? And then you wind up in an adult relationship with a narcissist, something that you might notice is that your personality changes. All the things you used to love, your hobbies, your passions, the things that you were good at, you slowly stop doing. And again, this is the subtle abuse of covert narcissists where through classical conditioning, through punishments and rewards, they rewire your nervous system again to stop doing the things that you love. Another emotion that winds up becoming a long-term state that you stay in is confusion, a state of confusion. There's so much gaslighting that takes place that your brain just feels stuck in a confused state. Now, because of the confusion that I just mentioned, this leads me to the next symptom, which is rumination. Now, with rumination, it's almost like our brain is traveling the same negative thought pattern over and over again. And what it's really trying to do is trying to process and understand something, right? Which isn't a bad thing in and of itself because our brain is a meaning-making machine. It wants to make meaning of things. But when we get stuck in rumination, it's different from healthy emotional processing where we're trying to find solutions. When we're stuck in rumination, we're going over what happened, and then once we get to the end, we go right back to the beginning and we play it again. It's like play, rewind, the same scenario over and over. And I know from experience that this can drive our family and well-meaning friends crazy because they're hearing the story. They're trying to help us to add information, but it's almost like our brain doesn't let anything new happen, no additional processing. It's just stuck on play, rewind over and over again. Because of narcissistic abuse, we lose an inner felt sense of safety. And what I mean by that is because of the chronic chaos, what it does to our nervous system. And because with narcissistic abuse, we never know what is going to set the person off. We never are just being in a peaceful state. And so even if the narcissist leaves, we continue to feel this inner lack of safety inside. And our mind can know we're safe. I can look around and realize I'm in a room with healthy people and my body is still waiting for the shoe to drop. And it's really hard to help our mind to update our body that things have changed, that it doesn't have to stay so alert, that it can feel safe. But that's a sign of narcissistic victim syndrome. And that lack of inner felt sense of safety often causes addictions, because behind our addictions is our body's desire to find safety, no matter what the addiction, whether it's a vice, whether it's drinking, whether it's drugs, whether it's scrolling, shopping, sex, pornography. No matter the addiction, the body is trying to find safety because it has lost its inner felt sense of safety. Abuse amnesia. Our brain, in an effort to help us to deal with the chronic chaos and stress that narcissistic abuse creates, thinks it's helping us by deleting the painful events when it sees a tiny bit of something positive. Remember those crumbs of love that sometimes we talk about? This tiny bit of human decency, our brain will hyper focus on and delete anything painful in an effort to try to help you to deal with the chaos. The problem is it also keeps you stuck in the abuse and the trauma. Narcissistic abuse really either hones in on some childhood negative beliefs that you had, or it creates these negative beliefs. I'm going to mention 3 most common ones. The first being, there's something wrong with me. I kind of feel like narcissists on an unconscious level know that there's something wrong with themselves. Rather than dealing with that, they provoke that belief in you. And so when they see you thinking there's something wrong with you, they've just regulated and bypassed their need to work on their negative emotion. And the other 2 beliefs that they love to provoke in their victims are the beliefs, I'm bad and I don't matter. And again, this is the narcissist who has those beliefs inside of them, no matter how confident they're acting, right? These are their unconscious wounds that they have not healed, and they provoke and project that onto their victims. And as a result, if you didn't have that self-image before, you will, by the end of a relationship with a narcissist, you will have the self-image that there's something wrong with you. I don't matter, and I'm a bad person. That being said, for those that feel like they're ready to shift into the CPTSD recovery part, I'd like to personally invite you to come check out the School of Transformation. Now, I will say that I used to have Thriver School of Transformation open for enrollment any day of the year that you wanted to join. I've recently changed it so that there are only 7 to 9 days out of the month where you can join. The last 2 days of the month and the first 7 of every month. So if you're ready to come do the inner work, come check us out.